Graeme Richardson-Locke, FESPA's Technical Support Manager. Welcome to the third in our series of FESPA Coffee Breaks. If you were with us for the previous discussions, you'll be clear about my role at FESPA. But if this is your first session, I'd like to tell you that I've spent the last 35 years fully immersed in screen and large format digital printing. I started as a shop floor trainee and moved up through management to taking on several directorships before joining FESPA in my current role. I'm also a member of the Academy of Screen and Digital Printing Technologies. And actually, I can't think of another business that could have presented more variety and creative interest for me. So FESPA, of course, is continuing to support its goals of knowledge sharing and community building in the screen and wide format print sectors through our international network. It has been doing this, not me, because I've only been around for 2 years, but it's been doing this since 1962, which is a pretty impressive achievement given the great many changes that have and are still taking place around us. We aim to keep this session to around 40 minutes as we understand that your time is limited. And we hope that you'll benefit from your investment and find some useful tips to focus on that will support your progress in a challenging market. When you consider the digitisation of businesses who use specialty print techniques, what started with design and desktop publishing progressed through to digital presses and on to finishing. And alongside these disruptions to conventional production came the advances in web to print and its capability to drive orders that are clearly funneled towards specific products. It can seem as if suddenly a tipping point was reached where the new local is Google. And with the ease of online ordering, customers get the job done in a fraction of the time it used to take. So on that basis, now is the time to look where software automation can take repetitive tasks off your desk and seriously increase your productivity. I'm now going to share with you the topic for today and the questions. Okay, so in today's coffee break, we're going to look at what are the benefits of software automation and what new skills are required. How automating repetitive tasks and building workflows will impress customers, increase throughput and reduce wastage. I'm now going to share with you the slide with our panelists. I'm very pleased to welcome Malcolm McKenzie, Technical Director at Colour Engine, and Andrew Bales-Collins, Senior Product Manager from Infocus, to the creators of Pitstop Pro and Infocus Switch. Firstly, Malcolm, can you introduce yourself, followed by you, Andrew, so that we can get a bit more understanding about you and your experience?
Yes, thank you, Graeme. Good morning to everyone. My name is Malcolm McKenzie. I'm Technical Director at Colour Engine. And I came into this world through a slightly circuitous route, but about 15 years ago, I came in via Colour. And then with Colour, we started to find problems with PDFs. So I started getting into Pitstop Pro. And from there, I started working with Enfocus and Switch. And from that, I've started the last 10 years been installing Switch installations in small customers, going up to some of the very largest customers in the UK. I'm still fascinated. I still love it. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Thank you. Andrew.
Yeah, I started out, left school and started out as an apprentice typesetter. Father ran a printing company, grandfather ran a printing company, so no pressure. Joined the industry, and my father told me I'd have a job for life because it was computerized. And then the Apple Macs came in, and I think it lasted about 8 years. So
was that photo typesetting? That
was photo typesetting, yeah. So I jumped around a little bit then. I went to work for a vendor selling stuff, and I went to work for an Apple Centre. And then I, luckily, with hindsight, managed to get a job at a colour house, pushing PostScript files into a crossfield system. And from there, I went to work for DuPont, which was great because that had a demo suite like a big toy store. and then went back into the industry as a pre-press manager at a couple of printing houses in London, offset places, taking them from conventional planning through to digital, PostScript, computer to plate, and then initially PDF as well. At the very early stages of PDF, we're doing a lot of work for the city. And then I made a jump to a vendor, working initially as technical sales, sales support, and then was offered a job in Germany with that company as a product manager. And that was about 15 years ago. And 5 years ago, that was with PDF actually as well, PDF edited and pre-flight. And 10 years ago, moved to Belgium, and I've been working for Infocus since then, 8 years as product manager for Pitstop, which is ironic because I actually bought the first version when I was a pre-press manager. So about 20 years on PDF, using it and product managing it. I'm also a member of the Ghent Work Group. I'm technical officer there and head of one of the specifications committee. And recently I've also got involved in ISO with the TC 130 group, ironically as an expert for Belgium, not for the UK.
Okay. Brilliant.
It goes where you live, not where you're born. So that's kind of interesting, but that's very early days for me at the moment.
Okay. I think it's worth mentioning that with Ghent Work Group, you know, FESPA are a member of Ghent Work Group, and we actively encourage our members across wide format and screen to look at what Ghent Work Group can offer in terms of PDF specification, and particularly looking at the sign and display specification that's available based on PDFX4. It's really, really interesting piece of work.
Yeah, we'd encourage people actually to get involved with that because it's the first stab at it. And everything we do is driven from the industry. So if people get it, play with it, and think it can be improved, then it's there to be improved. So please let us know if there's anything you like or don't like about it. Okay,
brilliant. So on that front, you can either contact Andrew or myself, and we can connect you up. Okay, so thank you very much for the introductions. It's really nice to know that we've got more than enough experience in the room to deal with today's topic. I'm going to, in the spirit of finding out who's with us today, I'm going to launch a quick poll. So if you could please take a minute to just complete that, it will allow us to see which sectors you're from, and yeah, and just I'm expecting quite a blend of attendees. So the poll is doing its usual thing of dancing around a bit right now. Okay, so we've got screen printers. Unsurprisingly, our largest cohort are digital wide format printers, but very pleased to welcome some textile printers, garment decorators, and screen printers, and even some industrial printers. So I think the interesting thing is this process of software automation is relevant to all of us. So let us now close the poll. Thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, so digital wide format make up about 60%. Okay, so without further delay, let's start with our first question. So is software automation relevant to both small printers and larger operations? I don't know which one of you wants to kick off on this one, so I'm going to let you fight it out.
I'm very happy. Sorry, I had muted there. Apologies if there's a bit of background noise. I have some work going on with builders, which can't always stop. So I've focused on the smaller customers first. And everyone has the same similar problems, which is actually getting the staff and the skills and being able to actually react to customers. in a timely manner. Everyone knows in the print world, and you can say yes or no, but 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon is normally when all the work comes in. And to be able to scale up quickly enough when print runs are getting shorter and customer expectation is getting larger. So automation is the way to go forward to free up workers to do more valuable work than just opening up a PDF and looking at it and then maybe doing a small change. So these are the sort of things that can just open up printers to a whole raft of improved experience for themselves and for their customers.
Okay. Andrew, would you like to?
Yeah, I also want to start by just defining what we mean by automation, because people talk about workflow, people talk about automation. When you talk about workflow, you think of what we all know of, the traditional pre-press workflows where you put a PDF in at one end and then you get delivery to a press or to a plate setter or a film setter at the end. So it's a PDF through to imposed, stepped content. When we talk about automation, we're talking about something completely different. We're talking about taking tasks and things that happen within your company, not necessarily just pre-press, and things that are done manually at the moment, which take time, are prone to error, and have to have a person there to do them. And we're talking about automating those so a person doesn't have to do them. And that can be what I just talked about in the pre-press scenario, but it can also be a lot more. So if we're talking about larger companies,
yeah,
what we tend to see in larger companies is they have more toys. So they've got an MIS system, they've got a web to print system, they've got, you know, various print engines, they've got different RIPs, they've got things like that. And the task of automation there is not only processing and managing files, not just PDFs, but files, but also connectivity. So it's the glue that can help those devices talk to each other and automate the business as a whole generally. So you grab information from an MIS, you process the PDF based on that information, and then you feed the result back to the MIS, which can be used for costing and things like that. So it's the same concept, but it's on a broader scale.
Okay, great. Malcolm, do you want to say something about the, you know, for smaller companies, the advantages of 24/7 workers?
Yeah. Yeah, one of the big problems that everyone has, I think, and this is regardless of scale, is just how files come in and how do you actually respond to them in a timely manner. And we're not talking here about anything terribly complex, but most printers are still very much emails are coming in, files are attached to emails in wide format, which we're dominated here. Stuff is coming through WeTransfer, which means someone has to open it up, grab the file, download it, rename it, put it into a folder. It's all very time consuming and it's non-profit making. So again, when we're talking about things, we're not actually talking about pre-flighting or actually doing anything as such with the PDF. It's just getting the file and getting the product that is needed to be printed quickly and responding back to the customer. So when we're talking about scalability, if you're a studio manager, everyone who is actually attending, a lot of studio managers end up working weekends to cope with their capacity issues. And that's where, when you can automate an awful lot of the repetitive aspects of the workflow, and it's simple to begin with. Again, we're here, some people will have highly complicated automation engines already, others not so much. So what we try and do is just say, look at something that's a key problem. And for a lot of people, it's getting files into the system. Then pre-press, getting through to print. Print is actually quite easy. It's delivering the files to the presses that the problem is, and getting it done in what, 24 hours for a lot of people now. That's their turnaround time. It's not 7 days or 14 days. So that's where it allows people.
Those luxuries are far past, aren't they?
Yeah, and having a print run of 20,000, whereas now it may be 2,000, but that's mixed up into 10 different lots. So it's a huge logistical issue of just moving files around, putting them into the right folders, getting the comms sorted out. And again, when you're making a small turnaround job, you may only be making £50 or something for a lot of people. So if you're doing 10 emails just to get that one job printed, you've lost money. So that's where we're trying to help people.
Okay. All right, let's move on to our second question today. So what tools are available, and is it worth starting with automated file checking before progressing on automation? Malcolm, as you've just finished the last one, maybe you can begin this one.
Okay. You broke up slightly, Graeme, I think, or everyone did. I certainly did. It's sort of an extension of where we're going with the first. File checking, which is obviously Andrew's baby with Pitstop, is crucial. And most people actually have experience already of it because they'll have pretty much any of the major workflows already have Pitstop licensed inside. So, but it tends to be a bit buried deep. What Andrew does and what I do is very much bring it to the forefront. And that is if you are trying to do a pre-press workflow. So again, we can say it's not a comms issue. This is just preparing the file correctly. Then Pitstop is your absolute best friend, in my opinion. And the beyond pre-flighting, you can do things. And that's again where smaller companies and larger companies by automating can actually find new avenues and new job opportunities that they couldn't do otherwise. And yeah, so pre-flighting, corrections, these are still things that people are slightly scared of, and that's what we try and demystify and try and help them and actually shape it so it works for them. Andrew, I'm sure, has hours of conversation on this subject, so.
Okay.
I probably took myself out of a job here, but to be honest, it is a good place to start, but it's not always the best place to start. Because the idea of automation is to solve problems. So what's your biggest problem? What's your biggest bottleneck? What's your biggest pain point? That's where you start. You focus on the place where you're going to get the most value from, and then go from there. Because once you've got over the first hurdle, you build confidence, you start to see that it works, you start to see the value. And then once you finish the first problem, you move on to the second problem, the third problem. And that's how it builds. It's not something that you sketch on a piece of paper and you go, right, tomorrow we're going to automate the whole business, bang. That's a bad approach because you never end up speccing what you want to do. A far, far better way is to start with your problems and then learn and grow from there. As Malcolm said, file checking is a big problem. As you said earlier, Graeme, 24-hour turnarounds are typical. And for the last 15 years, I've been hearing the problem where customer submits a file and they don't get back to the customer for 6, 8, even next day, and then have to say there's a problem. That's not great. You know, that's bad customer service. So if you can go back in a couple of minutes, that's brilliant. Then you've got time to make decisions. You've got time to have a conversation with the customer about schedules and costs and things like that. And let's be clear, the problem is not how long the task takes to do. Checking a file, even manually, is not a very lengthy process. The delay is somebody finding the time to actually then manually open the file and check it. So if you have software that can come in and do that, then you win. The second part of that equation is that instead of having a few operators opening up every file, checking it and making fixes, what a server-based product will do is check the files automatically for you, and maybe typically 80% will pass. So that's 80% of your files that your pre-press people don't have to get involved with. They're only working with 20% of the files. So you're saving their time of doing mundane things like opening a file and pressing a button to do things that add value. So It depends is the answer.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our third question. What skills are required to get a project moving? I think many of our attendees will be interested to know whether they need to bring in coding skills, or how much of it is accessible to them as print technologists and how much they'll need a new set of skills for.
It's, I mean, it's Enfocus and Switch is designed really to be organic, and it grows as you learn, but you will need help, obviously, because even things like Pitstop, people underestimate its power. And it's a bit like anyone who's used Word. You can most people just use Word to send a letter or to type something out, but actually it can be integrated into servers, MySQL, it can take feeds, it can do, but no one's been trained on that. And it's a bit like that with Pitstop. People get Pitstop in. So learning is important. Enfocus is massively into giving information to people. So if I was going to suggest to people, how do they learn about software, or do they trust the software, it's go to the forums, because that's users are actually talking about it. And Enfocus forums, people can go there and you can see all the sorts of solutions and crazy things that people are doing with automation, rather than just taking it from ourselves. But what you need in any organization is someone who loves the product and can see the future. I'm sure Andrew has it. Anyone who works with people and training, it's when they see that light bulb moment in someone's eyes and they go, I know what this can do now. And then they start to run. So generally my biggest problem when I start with people and they hit that point of understanding what the software does is actually to rein them in and say, let's just build on solid foundations before you start rushing off and trying to do a very strange, great idea, but we need to build on it. So the champions are there, and time. And I think that's it. We have people attending here. If you are thinking, if you're at the director level or owner level, you have to give your staff the time. You can't just say, because it's sort of pre-press, we're just going to give it to pre-press. And then this poor guy who's never really had to deal with logics and if, but, else, ors is probably feeling a bit out of depth. So to own the software, it's a combination of pre-press, champion, and hopefully someone with a bit of IT skills. But you don't need to come from a coding background to begin with.
Okay, that's great. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I'd even say, echo what Malcolm said. You need a champion and you need to give them time. You can't give it to someone and say, oh, can you look at this in your lunchtime? You can't expect them to do production work and then do a bit of automation, when they've got a gap. You need to take them out, especially at the beginning. You need to take them out and give them time and give them tasks, or they need to give themselves tasks. They need to have an idea. I mean, to be honest, you don't even necessarily need any experience. You need to know what you want. And then you can employ people like Malcolm to do it for you. It depends the approach you want to take. You either, it's like fixing a car. If you know how to fix a car, then you're quite happy to get the bonnet up and, start tinkering with the engine. But if you don't want to, you go to a garage and get them to do it for you. And it's a similar type of approach. You either do it yourself and then the learning curve, and take it on. I mean, I know people who buy the software and never talk to anybody, and you go in there 2 years later and everything's humming away. There's other people who invest some time in not only the software, but in the consultancy as well. And then they've got someone to hold their hand in the initial stages. And after some time, they can pick it up and run with them themselves. But the key part is having one person who is responsible, is keen, don't give it to someone who's not interested, and give them the time to do it.
Okay, that's great. Okay, moving on to the next question. Our fourth question is, what is Pitstop Pro? So on this one, I think I'm just about to launch another poll to see how many of our attendees are using Pitstop already. So I'm just going to launch this, and if you could please answer, that'd be terrific. So the poll is launched. So we have a, oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. Less than I would have anticipated. We're actually in our poll, we're at, just wait another 10, 15 seconds just to get to majority of people's numbers, but it's now settling out actually at nearly 80% of our attendees aren't using Pitstop Pro, versus a 22% are. So that's great. Thank you so much for letting us know. It will help Andrew with his answer. So I'm going to end the poll and let Andrew take the. So Andrew, what is Pitstop Pro?
I'm just thinking we should have done another poll asking if they got their credit cards with them. Pitstop Pro is a plugin to Adobe Acrobat. It's about 22 years old. It started out at the very, very beginning of PDF within pre-press print production. And basically it's got two tasks. One is to check a PDF to a set of predefined criteria and also fix them. And the second part is to manually edit them. So effectively what you can do is you can say, you know, has it got RGB? If it's got RGB, automatically convert it to CMYK using this ICC profile, but do that all on one click. So there's a lot of things that can happen automatically without an operator having to get involved and manually select things. And then the second part is you can actually select objects. So you could select a cutter guide and make it overprint, or you could do a typo or things like that. So it's been around for a very long time. Obviously in the very early days, the files were pretty terrible because there were no standards and everybody was doing their own thing. But it's evolved and the functionality has evolved as PDF has evolved in the industry. So it started out with publications, newspapers, magazines, commercial work, and it's evolved now into large format packaging, labels. So there's lots of things in there now for large format, enabling you to automatically create cut paths and adding bleed and all sorts of things like that, spot color conversions. So really it's the tool that enables you to get the one up correct before you then go and step it, or to get the job correct before you commit it into production. That's basically it in a nutshell. There's also Pitstop Server, which is the automated version, which is exactly the same, but runs lights out and doesn't need any operator to control it. So they're the two products that I look after.
Okay, great. Malcolm, I'll ask for your view after we've covered. The next question is about Infocus Switch. So Infocus Switch connects software and data. What efficiency gains can be realized? Andrew, maybe you want to start, and then Malcolm can bring his view in as well.
Yeah, I mean, Switch has got a couple of things. It's obviously the connectivity we talked about. And what it does is it joins applications as well as systems, so it can work with a lot of third-party applications and automate those. So if you want to open up a file and turn it into a PDF, typically that'd be an operator doing that. Switch can do that for you. So operator doesn't have to open a file and load the fonts and load the links. Software can do it for you. The connectivity, the pulling of information from databases and things like that. The gains can be pretty tremendous, actually. I mean, the return on investment is can be pretty fast. It depends what you want it to do, but yeah, I mean, if you look at what you're doing manually, if you look at your production, you need to really understand what's happening in your production in order to get the best out of it. But as I said at the beginning, you can do that in a piecemeal approach. But typically what we hear from most people is they're doing more work with the same people. You know, it's about getting more out of what you've got. And when we were talking earlier, Graeme, we were talking about something else, in that don't give those gains away. You know, you're spending software to get a better margin, and to be more competitive. Don't suddenly give it away, because this is where you're differentiating yourself from your competitor, who maybe has got a bog standard workflow. The fact you've got something bespoke for your particular business, your particular customers, your particular files, that differentiates you from other people. So that's one of the big things about automation.
If it's enabling your response rate and your service to, you know, your service back to the client to become, you know, far sharper and much more responsive, then people will be willing to attach some value to that, albeit
yeah, that value comes automatically. You don't have to give anything away. You're just giving your customers a better service by the very nature that you're working in a more efficient, more automated way.
Yeah. So interestingly, I suppose with Switch, you can have it as part of a fully integrated e-commerce framework, and you can kind of go end to end with it, or you can use it just on an internal kind of process. It's not just about enabling e-commerce, but it's about just doing things faster and getting rid of the tedious, repetitive, you know, generating courier delivery notes, bookings, that kind of stuff can again save ridiculous amounts of time, can't it?
Yeah, it's not just in pre-press. You know, it's everywhere. It's a little bit like a spider's web. One customer described it to me. It's kind of got feelers everywhere because of what it does. So yeah, it can be in different places, definitely. And you're absolutely right. It's, you know, can be many things, and because it's so flexible, I think a very important point is it grows with the business. It's not like I wouldn't use the word future-proof, because that is a pretty big word nowadays, especially. But it can connect to web APIs and things like that. So there's a lot of technology in there that can be utilized if you need it. So it does grow with the business, and it is scalable.
I think if any people who are attending today, they haven't actually looked at Switch, and their minds are sort of thinking of these, you know, quite large scale workflows that come in particularly from the manufacturers, which tends to impose on people. They say, right, you've got to have our front end, our web portal, you've got to have our way of working, and then you've got to have our imposition software. And that doesn't really work anymore for an awful lot of people, especially in wide format. If they've got lots of different RIPs, different machines, they've got different outputs, they possibly have multiple types of print to try and create a sort of a one-stop shop. So then these systems become very dinosaur, and they're not very nimble. So with Switch, it starts off very lean, and you add into it as you need it. If you want it to talk to your database, you can buy a database module. It doesn't have an imposition element within it. It has a little bit within Pitstop itself, but otherwise we can link in with the hooks from most of the major people like White Hot Imposing and people. They fit seamlessly into a Switch environment. So
Tilia Labs be also another.
Yeah, that's a huge one that's coming online.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can seamlessly link all of these elements up, and especially with HP and Switch and Enfocus have done a huge amount. So HP are writing their own integration directly, and most of the MIS systems are now as well.
Caldera, Onyx,
yeah, it's like plug and play to a degree. It's like, right, I've already got this. Okay, well, just let's put it in here. So the actual, when we're saying future proofing, we're not telling you how to impose your files. We'll deliver it to a package that can do that. So again, the learning of the actual workflow is easier because an awful lot of the time we're just porting in knowledge from other applications. And that extends even into things like Illustrator and Photoshop. So anything that you can do as actions, we can repeat and automate. So we take skill sets that people have already built and actually just be able to meld them into the system. And that's why people love it, because it's nimble. So a lot of people will have very expensive workflows, and then they have Switch as well, because Switch can do the things that the very expensive workflows can't do. So no, again, it's that light bulb moment for people when they realize that they can just do it on their own. They don't have to talk to a technical support or book in something or do a feature request.
Yeah. And just as a point of interest, in terms of Pitstop Pro server and Switch, Andrew, can you give our attendees some insight into the sort of investment required? What kind of costs are involved?
Certainly, yeah. So Pitstop as a plugin, Pitstop Pro, I think that's about, I've got to try and think of the pounds now. I think that's about £800, Malcolm, something like that.
I'm technical. I don't deal with things. I don't deal with money.
I tend to stay away and push people to salesmen. Yeah, I actually checked Pitstop Server before I came, just to be sure. Okay. Pitstop Server in fact, Pitstop Server is going through a change at the moment and gaining more automation because we're moving it to become switch-based. So it's been the same for about 20 years, where it was just a basic hot folder in and out. And we realized that's not what people want anymore. So we're actually building it on a switch platform, and that's a transition that we're in. And at the moment it's £3,300, but that price is actually going to go up on the 1st of January. It was due to go up earlier in the year, but because of COVID, we've delayed it. So yeah, that's going to go up quite a bit actually, because it's got a lot of extra functionality in there. So if anybody's thinking about it, worth having a look at the moment if you've got a bit of budget left. But no, that's the server base, and then from there, if you want to, your upgrade path is then into a full switch. And by a full switch, what I mean is you can then start to add the modules that Malcolm was talking about. So if you start with Pitstop Server and you think, oh, I could do with, I don't know, linking it to a database or working with XML or working with JDF, you can then add a module to increase the functionality of it. But you don't have to. If you're happy with it doing what you want, and then that's fine. But know that there's a future upgrade path for you if you need it.
And expanding those APIs that that sit within that will connect with Switch, they will have some licensing costs attached to some of them, and some are free, right?
Yeah, it depends. What we didn't talk about was that we actually have an app store.
Okay. For
Switch, and which is also available for Pitstop Server. And this is pretty unique, certainly in the printing industry, I think, in that it leverages the user base and our global integrators. So they can actually make these little apps that can be pulled into Switch, Pitstop Server to do little things, renaming, various tasks that Switch doesn't do, that specific little things. They can be free or they can be chargeable. That's entirely up to the person who builds them. But there's over 100 of those now. And these aren't, these are real things that people have built for their workflows or for their customers. So they're actually real world things. They're not, somebody woke up this morning and decided they were going to make something. They've got practical uses, and they just extend the functionality. Malcolm was talking about the HP integration. That's a similar example of it. They make an app and it connects Switch to their product or their service or their storefront or their website.
They have application center, don't they? So you can connect into that through.
Yeah, they have a couple. They have one for their VDP application, which is within Switch, and then they have a couple now, and I think there's one coming to connect into their cloud service. So yeah, there's a whole host of things, but it's not only from HP. I mean, it's from a variety of companies across the industry. So MIS systems, for instance. Yeah, it's a really nice way to build our platform.
Okay. So if people are interested and they drop you an email after, you can point them in the right direction to.
Yeah, go to our website, drop me an email. Very, very happy to help.
Okay, great. Well, we're always running against time on these sessions, so I think Malcolm, unless you've got anything just to sign off on that, I think we're going to move on to a couple of questions from our attendees.
No, I'm good, I think. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you both for these really interesting answers. So what we've got in the Q&A, I haven't looked yet, so this is always the exciting bit, to see just how difficult the questions might be. So, okay, a couple I can see. One from Craig Dennis, who I don't know if you both know Craig, but he's a very able man, that's for sure. Was with Dear Smith. He's asking, how does automation work with complex trapping in a screen, flexo or litho workflow? I don't know if there's you can bring some light to that in a few minutes.
Yeah, well, firstly, you've got to have an application to do complex trapping. It's not something that Enfocus do. And in fact, to be honest, you know, if you go back 10 years, there were quite a few trapping applications. Generally, most of it now tends to happen in RIP. So which is actually probably the best place for it, unless you want to proof it. I mean, our sister company, ESCO, also make various trapping applications. They don't tend to work within Switch, I must be honest. I don't know if you know anything that does trapping, Malcolm, outside of the RIPs?
It's something that I avoid like the plague, I must admit, because it's yeah, it's very deep in there, and we don't work with it within Pitstop or anything, so I don't really get involved in it. Most of it for Flexo is being done by the plate makers, I think, so they're all pretty much sorted, or it's happening in pre-press. But otherwise, it's not something that we pick up or do anything specifically with at the moment.
No. So, I mean, yeah, manual trapping, there are applications for that. Automatic trapping tends to be in RIP nowadays.
Or it's just so complex that if it's in packaging,
yeah,
it becomes perceptual as well sometimes about how they actually want it to work and where the cutoff points are. I tried to apply my brain to it, but my brain's too small.
I think I know from my personal experience in screen, when you're trapping green over a transparent green over processed yellow, and you know it is a very tricky area. I think Craig's actually just come back and said that PACZ, P-A-C-K-Z, is in his view a very good trapping solution. So thank you, Craig. You've given us something back, which is very generous of you. Okay.
Actually, to be honest, Graeme, if you talk to the engine manufacturers, you don't need trapping anymore. The print engines are so precise now.
My feeling on that is, and I know particularly if you're looking at screen, then you know trapping is an absolute must.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree with you. When it comes to wide format, it's not required.
Inkjet especially, yeah. But it's still there. It's
screen
still there.
And you're printing on vinyl or paper and board, and the stock's moving all over the place, and you know, a bit of trapping definitely helps you get through the day. Okay, we've got another question here from Paul Sherfield, actually. Hi, Paul. So PDFX4, do you think it's best to convert the chosen CMYK profile? Do you think it's best to convert to the chosen CMYK profile to ensure the expected, or can the printer be trusted to use the correct color settings in their digital front end? Areas such as color management modules and RI can play their part.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's probably the answer. Very simply, without going too far, but the state of most digital front ends is pretty appalling when you go in and look at it. So trying to trust their settings. Having PDFX, if people aren't aware, allows people to have RGB images, and basically we're doing the late conversion to the actual destination print profile and trying to keep as much live as possible. Internally, I'd say that's great for producers and content producers, and I've certainly set up companies on PDFX for internally, but when they send it to the printers, they will convert everything beforehand to CMYK.
Yeah, we talk about this again quite a lot. So just to clarify, when you make a PDFX4 file, you have to define what you call an output intent.
Yeah.
And that is basically the profile or the standard that was used to proof the file, or the way you viewed the file on the screen. And some of them are actually meant to be there. Others are just the default that InDesign gives you. You know, I think it's swap is the
if you
standard default.
set up your color settings thoroughly, then it just default, one of the outputs is US coated swap, isn't it? Which is a color.
So it's that relationship again between the customer and the print service provider, to understand if the customer actually knows what he's doing regarding color. The benefit of getting a PDFX4 file is that you know certain things. You know the fonts are embedded, you know the color spaces that are involved, it's an ISO standard, but the output intent is the one thing that you kind of take with a pinch of salt. Whether you embrace it and then you use a device link conversion to get it to the process that you want to print it on, or whether you just throw it out and put your own in, depends very much on that relationship.
I know from my own experience that, you know, driving a press with CMYK, orange, green and violet, and then someone comes along with a swap coated file and says, it's looking a bit flat. And you say, well, send me the Adobe RGB file, let me do the conversion and I'll show you what good looks like. Yeah. I mean, I think swap is 290,000 colors versus an extended gamut can be what, 980,000. So yeah, getting the right output profile is absolutely critical, isn't it? In
PDFX4 will actually allow you to have an RGB output intent.
Yeah,
it's the specification allows it, but that then opens up another whole load of questions as well. And that's to be honest, that's where Ghent comes in, because Ghent takes the PDFX4 as the base and then narrows it and builds an industry standard. So for large format, for web offset, for, you know, based on PDFX4, but narrowing the parameters to make it more industry specific.
Brilliant.
And Paul's a troublemaker, by the way. I think we probably all know him anyway.
We know that. We know that of Paul.
I think we got away quite lightly with that one.
Yeah. Well, Paul, hopefully that gives you an answer that you'll be satisfied with and you won't come looking for us afterwards. Sadly, that's nearly all we have time for today. We, as usual, I'm afraid, have overrun a little bit. I'm afraid that's an occupational hazard with me. Thank you for participating, and please join us for the next coffee break, where we'll stay on track within our focus on process control, software automation and sustainability. That registration link will be sent out shortly. If you're interested in watching this webinar, please feel free to check our YouTube channel, FESPA TV, where you can find it from tomorrow. Please complete the survey that will be sent to you after this webinar. Give us some feedback. We thrive on feedback, and we use it to inform what we do next time. I'm also really pleased to say that registration is actually now live for the FESPA Global Print Expo and European Sign Expo 2021. So please visit our show websites and register accordingly. And now, before we all say our thank yous and goodbyes, I'm going to share the contact slide again for Andrew, Malcolm and myself. If you do have any questions, then you know where to reach us. I think it's been really useful today. You know, this is a journey well worth getting involved with, and I think the payback, there may be some pain points on the way to getting it up and running, but you know, the return for your effort is you know, in many cases that I've seen, is hugely rewarded. So
not doing it is much more painful.
Yeah, yeah. So that leaves for me to say thank you very much. And I think Malcolm and Andrew, you may wish to say your own goodbyes.
Goodbye.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and keep safe, keep wearing masks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely support that.
2021. I look forward to it. I hope it's an improved year. So no, but thank you very much, Graeme, for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks, Graeme. Very good, very good.
My pleasure. It's been it has been a joy for me. All right. Cheers. We'll see you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.